I was at a friend's house and we were around a bunch of girls. I think it was 7th grade, and the girls told us to take our shirts off and flex our abs. And guys don't flex their abs, and all the girls are impressed. And then it gets to me and they say, flex your abs. And I was like, I am flexing, and everybody laughed.
Clayton, welcome to POVz. I could not be more excited to have a fellow Midwesterner here on the couch with me. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, Midwest representing out on the East Coast together. So it's been enjoyable so far being here in the city of New York, and I'm ready to dive into some topics and dissect it a little bit.
I can't wait. Do you feel ready for what's about to happen?
I don't know if you can always ever be 100% ready, but I'm about as prepared as I could be with at least my mind's ready. I got some caffeine in me. Amazing. So I think I'm ready to open the conversations that we're about to dive into, but I don't know what they all are, so you're gonna have to just let them fly.
Well, here we go. Let's dive in.
All right.
We always start off here on POVz with somewhat of a controversial yes or no question, so we can dive right in. So you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, Clayton, my question for you is honesty always the best policy?
You know, I think it's on a case-by-case basis. As I've realized, and I've had multiple individuals tell me, I never use absolutes, but understand that every single environment you go into, it's really dependent upon who you're around, knowing your audience, and knowing those individuals can handle. I think there are times when you have to realize that just because you may be okay with saying something and that you would receive it or perceive it one way, your perception's your perception, and that's your reality. But that might not be someone else's reality. I learned that lesson the hard way, but it was a lesson I really needed to learn. We have control with our words, our actions, even our intentions. But once it's the perception's there, we lose control at that point. And I think that's where I found myself at times fighting so hard to explain myself with my intentions. And because I was like, yeah, I'm being honest. And what's wrong with being honest? It's good to try to be honest, but you have to understand that what you say still will leave an impact on someone. You have to be cognizant of that. And if it hurts somebody, then their feelings are justified. And sometimes that's where honesty might not always be the best policy. And I say this, I don't think you should ever lie to somebody, but sometimes maybe you should withhold some of the statements or thoughts that you're having because they can do more damage than good. It's not always the best policy, to be honest. Sometimes it's better to withhold your internal thoughts.
I appreciate you sharing that. I've never thought of it that way, withholding versus sharing everything. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. That definitely broke my echo chamber. Do you think there's such a thing as being too honest?
Yeah, I absolutely think there are times where, again, you can be too honest. And again, it comes down to your audience. I think it's so important for people to understand, depending on what environment you're in, your actions can be taken 50 different ways. Susie and I, we talk about this a lot. It's interesting, but our takes on things are different, sometimes more different than similar. And it's because of our upbringing. It's because of the environments that we were raised in that dictates our character, that dictates the way that we think about things. And we come from different environments. So a lot of times how we perceive one particular instance of something happening, she might see it one way, I'll see it the completely other way. And neither way is wrong. You have to find that middle ground. Okay, if we both see things differently, how do we come to the middle here and make sense of what it is and understand what our true intentions are? But oftentimes when you have people with differing viewpoints, that's where you might have pure intentions over here with your honesty. But that honesty and what you're saying is being perceived different than what you think it might be. And that's where it can be something that will harm someone else. Again, that's where I think it's more important before you're honest, maybe to start asking questions. I don't think you can ever ask too many questions and kind of probe a little bit and understand where that person's mindset is. And then by asking that, you can get a better idea of, okay, here's where this person stands. Now can I be more honest in this realm with them?
Yeah, asking questions is everything. That's
Critical.
How we can better understand other people. It's how these conversations work. That's what
Absolutely.
I'm doing here with you today.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
I know that question of honesty probably really rings true because of what ensued on your season. So looking back on your journey, is there anything that you would do to rewrite the story? If you could go back, is there anything you'd do differently?
You know, I think if I were to change anything, it would have been what happened after filming was over. Because I really felt that my heart was in the right place during the show. But I want to say that obviously I made mistakes. I'm fully aware of that. And even though I had the best intentions, I hurt individuals. But I have to give myself some grace to understand that my intentions were always pure. With that being said, I still really left a bad sour taste in a lot of people's mouths for my actions. What I wish I could change was the amount of time that I spent trying to defend my character and coming up with explanations, but they were perceived as excuses. And I spent so much time backed into this corner trying to defend what I did that it was almost, in a way, creating more harm, because it seemed as though I was trying to justify everything that I was doing, when in reality, I should have just come to terms with the fact that, like, I hurt people and I'm hurting them more by trying to explain myself, when in reality, I should just accept accountability. But I realized that a lot of times why I wasn't able to do that was because my ego was getting in the way. Because again, once it goes from intention to perception, that's when it goes from me with my intention to somebody else's perception. That's when you lose control. And I was trying to take back and say, no, here's who I am. This is who I am. What you're seeing, what you said, like, that's not me. I didn't do it for this reason. And I was questioned a lot on my intentions, or my actions, I should say. Oftentimes you can do more harm with over explaining. And I think it's sometimes easier just to say, listen, I messed up. Sure, my intentions, if someone asks for them, you can explain them. A lot of times I think I meet a lot of individuals that we're so focused on trying to be right that we end up driving ourselves down a deeper hole. And I think that all comes back to ego. We're so focused on trying to say, well, this is why I did it. And if you can't understand this, then you're in the wrong.
Completely. Yeah, humility is everything. I think that's something I learned growing up in the Midwest. It's, in my mind, always more important to be kind than to be right. And so it seems like you've done a lot of growing, a lot of learning. Being on the other side of it all, is there something that you wish people understood about where you are now, or something you wish you could tell people? Yeah,
I'm never done growing, right? I think I packed in 10 years of growth into those 5 months that I was on in the spotlight. But I really just wish people could understand that, I really am a good person, I believe I am, but I'm not a finished product. I'm always trying to do more to better myself. And so my intentions are pure, but I am human. I just wish people understood that. And I make mistakes, and I don't think I'm any better than anybody else. I don't think that because I was in this role, that makes me a better person than somebody. I don't feel that it gave me a leg up on anyone. All it did was it really gave me time to reflect back upon myself after I was in the spotlight and realize, wow, like, you really did create a lot of chaos, for lack of better words. And so how can you now take this and grow, and beyond growing, but then give back and be able to share your experiences with others? So I think I'm starting to be able to turn that corner, but I just really want people to understand that, I am human, that I do make mistakes, but that I genuinely do care about people that I'm around. And sometimes I think it's to my own detriment. Sometimes I'm so much of a people pleaser that I take actions that ultimately end up being hurtful to everybody, including myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm so focused on trying to impress other individuals and trying to be good enough. That's always been something that I've struggled with, is not feeling like I was good enough. And so that's where I think I get in these sticky spots where all of a sudden I lose myself trying to please others.
I hear you. But when we wrap up this moment of The Bachelor, I know Gabby and Rachel's season is coming up. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you would want them to know?
Yeah. At the end of the day, for me, I want them both to find the happiness that I found. I know the impact that I made on those two women, and I feel terrible for how much hurt I sent their way and through the actions that I took. And I really just, at the end of the day, hope that they will be able to one day forgive me. And they can take as much time as they need to do that, because there is no timeline for how long it should take to forgive someone for their own actions. But I really do genuinely hope that both of them can find the happiness that I've found, that whatever it is, and in whatever way they're looking for, whether it's a loving relationship, whether it's just happiness and self-love, I really hope that they can heal from the experiences that they had with me. And I hope that they're able to move forward and be better, and feel that ultimately that it wasn't a detriment to them to get to know me. Hopefully through the actions I took, they're able to find the positive in it. And if they do that, and we are able to have a conversation down the road and understand that, hey, we're all human and we made mistakes, but we have that mutual respect and understanding that, and give each other grace, I think that'd be a really cool day. So I just wish the best for both of them, and I really hope they do find what they're looking for.
I mean, everything you just shared is the perfect recipe for a meaningful dialogue, right? Being able to give each other grace, respect one another, and come to that dialogue actually listening to other people's perspectives. So thank you for walking the walk.
Yeah.
And I know something that you care so deeply about is mental health. Clayton, I so admire how vocal you are about your own mental health journey, but also in sharing it in a way to inspire others. So is there a moment in your journey that you can pinpoint when you first realized that you were struggling with your mental health?
Oh yeah, it goes all the way back to 7th grade. That was when I started to have feelings of just not being good enough, coupled with not loving who I was myself. That was when I first realized I had body dysmorphia, although actually I don't know if I knew the terminology at the time.
What did that look like to you in 7th grade?
Yeah, so what it boiled down to was, I was comparing myself. I think comparison's the thief of joy, and I still do it to this day. I think we're in a culture where comparison is across the board. No matter where you look, if you go online, Instagram, you see somebody like, I wish I looked like them. I wish I had their lifestyle. I found myself comparing myself to former bachelors and saying, well, they have all this success. I want that success. And if I don't get that success, then it's because I'm not good enough. I was doing that with from down to the follower count. It got to the point where it became so crazy to me, where I would look at it and be like, you have a third less followers than the previous bachelor. It's because you're not good enough. That's why. I realized it was a giant struggle, but this started all the way back in 7th grade.
Wow.
And I would compare my body to my friends around me. We'd we'd go to the pool, and at the time they get all the guys would get comments. They'd have abs, and I remember this conversation. I'll never forget it. I was at a friend's house, and we were around a bunch of girls. I think it was 7th grade, and the girls told us to take our shirts off and flex our abs. And the guys all flex their abs, and all the girls are impressed. And then it gets to me, and they say, "Flex your abs," and I was like, "I am flexing," and everybody laughed. And I remember it just stuck with me, because that was at the beginning of it when I started thinking I don't have what everybody else has. I don't have the 6-pack abs. I'm not as defined. And then I started to just every day I woke up and looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't like who I saw. And that just became the snowball effect, where I started off in a bad mood and not liking myself, and that carried into my day. And I was a very pessimistic person, and nobody wanted to be around someone like that, because that rubs off. I was kind of popular in high school by association, but I would go to these parties and I wouldn't really, I'd just kind of be there. And I never really felt like I fit in per se. And I felt like I just always was questioning my self-worth. And so that led to a really dark path of thoughts that I had, where I thought, it's the easy way out of this is you know what the easy way out is. And do you want to continue to keep waking up every day and hating who you are? And I just finally got to a point when I realized, I was like, I don't want to be like this. But I also was too afraid to take action, of ending things. I was really ultimately just too scared to do it. And so I said, well, you don't want to be like this, so how can you find a way to get out? And that's when I started to just do research online, find ways to better myself, and hopefully get away from these dark thoughts and love who I was. So that's where fitness was a massive part of my life, and has been. Finding healthy ways to be able to really, at the end of the day, change my bodies in a good way, so when I wake up in the morning, I can look at myself and be like, okay, I like the way I look. But it's been a long journey, and since 7th grade, and I still to this day have body dysmorphia. It never goes away. I've gotten it under control. But I think it's important that people need to understand that body dysmorphia can look like 100 different things. People see me, they go, you look great. And I'm like, but I don't see that. So how can you have body dysmorphia? I'm like, that's where I think it's a misconception, that people think body dysmorphia only impacts those that look a certain way. But you can be extremely low body fat, as healthy as all can be, but I don't see what other people see when I look in the mirror. I see the things I don't want to see, and I focus on those things. Yeah, it's been a long, long journey, and that's just on the body dysmorphia side, but the not feeling good enough side. I mean, that goes back with story after story after story. I always felt like I was falling short. When I went to the NFL, I got cut after 2 months, and I thought, oh, there you go. You got there, but you couldn't stick. You fell short. You're not good enough. But that's where perspective is so critical, because I'm like, dude, you got to the NFL. You should be really proud of yourself. But I'm over here thinking well, I didn't make it. I got cut, so you're not good enough. And it's all that I have to do is switch that perspective and understand, look how far you've come. You made it where 0.0001% of people make it. So you were good enough in that instance. But oftentimes I think I'm just my own biggest critic, and I think people can be. And that's where you have to be able to find a way to switch that narrative in your head. But how do you do that? I think that's a journey in itself.
I mean, it's way easier said than done. And Clayton, thank you for sharing that. No one should have to go through that of feeling not good enough to the point where you may just want to end it all. And so I just want to hold space for the fact that like that seems like it's been a really dark, windy journey since 7th grade. And thank you for normalizing the fact that we should A, talk about it, but B, that to this day you're still on that journey. You know, healing isn't linear and we're all going through it just the same. And I really appreciate you opening up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best thing for me was opening up.
And do you feel like you were able to open up at the times in which you were struggling? Was there a culture in your school growing up or even in the NFL where it was normalized to talk about these things?
No, in fact, I think it was the opposite. So much of my life and my identity was based around football. And that's really an alpha male environment, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I always air quote this because real men don't talk about emotions. That was the narrative that was presented to me. Also, I grew up in a house with 2 other brothers, younger brothers. So it was just all men in my household. And we didn't really, again, all throughout high school, if you talked about your emotions, you were perceived as soft or any other expletive that you can think of. So that was where I was actually very emotional. I remember when I was in 7th grade and I cried a lot and I got made fun of it for it and I got bullied. And because I wasn't the size I am now, I was a lot smaller. I came from a Lutheran school, went to public school. I was very sheltered, so I had no understanding of a lot of the concepts that when I came into middle school, such as, you started having these interactions with, with opposite sex about, having these feelings. Like I kind of, in that Lutheran school environment, was sheltered. We didn't really talk about that. In fact, we kind of waited, you wait till marriage to be intimate with anybody in any capacity. So I kind of got bullied for having a different mindset when I came into middle school. I just felt that the more times I would open up and say something, or if I was emotional, there would be massive blowback.
Wow.
And it was like, you're not a man because you're crying, and that's soft and men don't cry. And so that was all throughout football. And so, but I realized the more times I suppressed something instead of addressed it, that it just continued to build up.
Totally.
And then one thing became 10 things, which became 20, 100 things. And then all of a sudden you have those moments where you're like, I have 100 things weighing down on me, and it doesn't just feel like a little weight. It feels like this giant mountain coming down on you. And I think that's where you start to get in these, well, I have so many things going wrong in my life, so there's no way I can get out of this rut. But had I just addressed it originally, it would have never piled up to 100.
Yeah, I mean, having been shut down for your emotions and not being able to talk about these things earlier on typically would prevent someone from ever wanting to talk about it again. How did you get to this place now where you can openly be someone who is a mental health advocate and can speak up after being shut down so many times?
Something that I realized the power of conversation is just having one more. And so every time that I felt like I got shut down, I thought, well, what if I just open up to somebody else? And I realized very, very quickly the issue was I was outward with my emotions, which there's nothing wrong with that. But what happens is when you're outwardly projecting your emotions, you really do face the possibility of being judged by everybody that's in that environment.
Yeah.
And whether you ask for their criticism or not, they're going to provide it based off of them seeing your outward projection. But I realized that I could start having these really great conversations with individuals that I trusted, that really cared about me. And when I started having it was really one conversation. I found one friend, and I started just talking. And I think it started with my brothers, and I love both of them. But I think me and my youngest brother were, we kind of fought at an early age. We'd butt heads. But my middle brother really was, that person I think that I started just talking to and started just saying, hey, I'm feeling kind of like this. And because I knew that I could trust him, because he was always there for me, always in the household, he could give me feedback, and he wanted what was best for me. So very quickly I realized that as long as I can trust somebody and I can open up to them, they're going to find a way to be able to hopefully help me and not hurt me. They're not going to take anything I say and weaponize that against me. And then I realized that beyond him, it's like, okay, what happens when he's not there for me though? Maybe he's across the country somewhere else. Then it was just a matter of finding other individuals that I trusted. And what happened was I built this support system around me. And now I maybe have a support system of like 10 people. It's not a ton, but I don't want any more than that really. I mean, it'd be great if I could find more, but I think it is so hard to find people that you can open up to fully and that they'll do the same. And whenever I fall down, it's like they're right there to pick me back up. And
That's
they
huge.
will pick up the phone at any point because they know like if he's calling me for something. And even if it's nothing, they're just going to be there to listen or whatever it might be.
That's huge. I mean, it's always quality over quantity. So I'm so happy
Absolutely.
you've been able to build that support system.
Yeah.
For anyone out there right now who is still struggling to find a way to open up about what they're struggling with, whether it be body dysmorphia, whether it be mental health, feeling not good enough, what would you say either to your younger self or another young person out there that doesn't know where to start and actually take the jump to talk?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I would say for a piece of advice if I were to give to my younger self is for one, I would acknowledge that, your feelings are valid, right? When I was in 7th grade, the things that I thought were important, that felt like the end of the world. If I wasn't popular, if this girl didn't like me, then I was like, then what am I doing here on this earth? And then I realize now as I look back, I'm like, none of those things matter anymore. That girl's moved on. She's with somebody else. Like I'm not looking, like those topics that bothered me then no longer have a hold on my life, and they haven't had a hold on my life for years. But still in that moment, those feelings I had were valid and they did hurt me. So it's like, I think the first thing is understanding. And if I were to talk to somebody, my younger self, it's like, hey, this acknowledging like what you feel is valid and you have every right to feel that way. And you're hurting. Now maybe take some time to reflect and go pull and find the root of the issue. What is it that really is hurting you about, not the fact that you feel like you're not fitting in? Why is that? And why is that so, like, identifying the internal problem that's really kind of pulling at you? Because I think it's a matter of, it's different for everybody, but finding the source of that root that's planted, that's created this concept in your head of, oh, I'm not good enough or whatever it might be, and saying, well, okay, how can we address this to make it a little bit more palatable so that when you go forward, now you have an understanding of, okay, now I'm cognizant, now I'm aware of what it is that is creating this issue and how can I address it? And that's just through having conversations. That's through opening up and finding people. And that's what I would say to my younger self is like, find that support system. Shoot, nowadays we have everything at our fingertips. Go online, find people that also struggle with that. You can type in, okay, if I have body dysmorphia, type in body dysmorphia. Type in body dysmorphia YouTube. You can find stories of others that talk about it. And I think when you realize that you're not alone, you're gonna feel a lot better of knowing like, okay, this person got through it. And if maybe you watch 10 videos and 10 people got through it, that's gonna give you a whole lot more confidence to think, okay, if they got through it, this is more common than I thought, and now I can get through this as well.
It's huge. Community is everything, and community married with conversation. So many people need to take it upon themselves also to learn, to educate, to Google, to find others. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because sometimes we miss that extra step to just actually pick up your phone and type something in, or go out of our way to find that support system if we feel like we don't have it. So
absolutely,
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
So Clayton, I'm so excited to bring us to our next segment on POVz, where we're going to start introducing different viewpoints from the larger Gen Z community. Okay. So keep an eye on your phone. We're going to send you some texts. Okay. And when you get one, you're going to read it out loud and then share your POV.
Okay.
Here we go.
So mental health isn't anything more than a trend. We all get sad and then we all get over it. It's nothing more than that.
Ooh, what do you think?
I think that's extremely insensitive to say that, because what that statement is that's invalidating someone's emotions. That's the way that I perceive it. And maybe someone else perceives that differently. But when I hear that, I almost get this really like upset feeling, because to me, I read that and I'm thinking that is a very bold statement. And you just cast a wide net and just basically said that I'm going to group everybody into this category, that this is just trendy. What we're talking about this because it's going to get your 15 seconds of fame. And it's like, that is what stops somebody from opening up, because they're going to say, well, I don't want to be perceived this way. If I open up myself, then it's going to, like, I don't want someone to think that I have bad intentions, so I'm going to suppress it. Like a comment like that causes somebody to suppress it. And that's when people take action, and oftentimes the wrong actions, because they continue to suppress, and then the pile-on effect happens. And then that's what leads somebody to saying, I can't handle this anymore. So
what would you want that person to know?
I would really challenge that individual that typed that out to take a moment to understand that that's a very insensitive thought process. And you need to now, I think, challenge yourself in that viewpoint and ask yourself that maybe I'm wrong by saying that. And maybe I need to take more time to explore the conversations that people are having around mental health. and seeing the impact that it really has on individuals. Because if it's a trend, if you feel it's that way, then in my eyes, it's like you're kind of almost implying that it doesn't have a substantial impact to talk about it. And you can find so many individuals that are going around the country right now and talking about their experiences and talking about how these conversations are life-changing. I've had it happen with people in my inbox. I have one conversation on social media, on a podcast, and I have someone reach out and they say, you talking about body dysmorphia helped me understand it. I think that's what I struggle with and I had no idea. So thank you for opening up, because I no longer feel alone. And I think the studies show that one of the biggest reasons people commit suicide is because they feel alone. And so it's so important to be able to strip that and take that away from people and understand that, no, you're not alone. The more times we have this conversation, the more often like we're going to be able to create change. So that individual, I would say, I think you need to really to continue to do more research and educate yourself and pull away from that mindset. Because why do you think that? Why do you think it's just trendy? Or why are you upset that we're talking about something that can potentially help people out? I think that, to me, that sounded almost like I could almost feel the emotion coming off of the text. Like, this is just a trend. It's like, why are you devaluing it? What is it that you're upset about? Why we're having this discussion?
Sometimes maybe people also share a viewpoint based on their own experience, but they haven't heard someone else with a different one.
Yeah.
So maybe that person hasn't had a close friend or a family member who's really struggled, and all the more reason to start exploring other people's views and stories, because that's how we come closer together.
Yeah, and they made the point, they said, we all get sad. That's so true. We all get sad. We all experience all these emotions.
But we don't just all get over it.
We don't just all get over it. Everybody gets over it at different speeds.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, how much time is the right amount of time to get over something, however long it takes for that person. And that's how it goes. There's not one fix for all. You can't just, you can take 20 different people, put them in one environment, and they might come out with 20 different outcomes. And that's where we have to say, okay, like their perception is their reality. That's important to them. So I can't take that away from them because this is the way they see it. I'm over here. So to be able to understand this, I have to be able to explore their perspective. And that's through doing your due diligence. And I think I would say this person that texted that, I'd say, do your due diligence and continue to look into it a little bit more and maybe pull back some of that bias that you seemingly have and see if you can see it from a different viewpoint. Reality TV is the farthest thing from reality. People who go on it are toxic and need help.
That feels a little personal.
Yeah, it is personal. And I would imagine that this individual that typed this up has never been on reality TV. And this is where I think it's so important that when somebody makes this statement, I'll say this, I actually might have had this viewpoint myself before going on reality TV because I didn't have the experience with it. So I saw what I saw from behind a TV screen. And I remember the first time I saw The Bachelor, my mom watched it all the time. And I remember thinking, these guys are very questionable with like their decision making. And I'm like, this is my perception of him. He seems like a bad guy. And then I meet them in person and they're nothing like what I saw on TV. And my experience in itself was completely different than what I would have ever thought. And what I can say is this, pertaining to reality TV is not reality. My emotions were very real, every last one of them that I experienced on the show. And some people might be able to fake emotions, but I certainly can't. So when people saw what I was feeling and the feelings that I had and expressed, that was real. So reality TV is real. Are there certain things that could be orchestrated, or are certain things, again, like what is shown is what is shown. You could make a show 20 different ways because again, when you're filming 24 hours out of the day, they show what they can show in 2 hours. They show the most important things, what's ever important to them. But whatever's important to them might not be important to somebody else. But the whole point is that everyone perceives that reality a little bit differently, but it's still real. The emotions are still real. And I'll say this much too. I'm in a very real relationship right now with Susie. So if it's not real, then how do you explain what the two of us have? She walked off the show and made the decision to walk away and end things with me. And if it wasn't real, then she would have continued on without me. And even if she continued on without me, that doesn't mean it's not real. But the fact that we worked things out off camera means that what we had built on the show, there was something there that we felt it was worth exploring. It's real. It is very real. I would bet almost all my money on it that this person has never been on reality TV. Some of the nicest people I've met went on it. And they weren't anything like what I saw from the edit, but I spoke with them and I realized these are very incredible individuals that have an incredible story, that have went through so much. And they're not toxic. If anything, it's been therapeutic to get to know them. Like, they have helped me through a lot because they shared a similar experience. And I think they're incredible for what they went through. I think it takes a really tough-minded person to be able to face the criticism on a wide spectrum. Maybe we all need help afterwards because we're not ready for all the blowback. But hence that's why I went to therapy and I've got my own help. But I don't think we're toxic individuals. And you can't say that. Not everybody. Some people are great that go on reality TV. Other people aren't. Everyone goes on for their own reasons.
What does it say?
Oh, gosh. This is a hot take. Monogamy is just not it. The future of relationships is polyamory. Nobody should be stuck with one person forever.
Ooh.
That is a massive hot take.
Agree, disagree.
Well, you know, the show itself is based around kind of a polyamorous mindset within the end goal of getting to monogamy. So it's, again, when I hear something like this, it's like, this is, I've had this conversation one too many times probably, as far as, but it's good because it's thought provoking. Personally, I think monogamy is the way. I think that's where I lost myself, was trying to navigate an environment that I wasn't familiar with and trying to play this role and accept that, like, this is normal. And I got very lost with trying to navigate in that environment, that in the polyamorous environment I was in. And I was very kind of I was self-destructing, trying to navigate the right way, but I had no experience to pull from. If it works for you and it makes you ultimately happy, then more power to you. I oftentimes don't try to cast judgment on individuals that live their lives differently. They can do it in a productive way where they're not harming individuals around themselves, and they can have a really actually productive relationship that is fulfilling from all parties' ends, and there is no fallout or negative impact that results from those relationships, then I guess more power to you. At the end of the day, I can only really speak on what I'm comfortable with and what I know. So
yeah,
this person that typed this out, if you can find a way to be in a polyamorous environment works for you and it doesn't harm anybody else or any parties involved, go for it. But for me, I'm gonna stick to I'm a one woman kind of guy.
So monogamy is it.
Monogamy is it for me.
Yeah, I
yes.
hear ya.
But like, for someone else, it can be something different.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. People who go to college for sports get special treatment, and it's so unfair. When I was an athlete, we definitely were pushed up on a pedestal, not often by our own actions per se, but how kind of others decided to treat us. I think a lot of it, though, is understanding that I think the reason why athletes get a lot of attention and they get a lot of resources to things and we get free clothing and all that, it's because we're moneymakers. We were moneymakers. A lot of these athletes, I mean, you see what's happening right now in the world of sports. These athletes are finally getting paid in college, but they bring in millions and millions of dollars to the university, and they're subjecting themselves to a lot of good and bad things. But you got to look at it from this perspective. I mean, I don't know how many years of my life I took off by playing football. I was fortunate enough not to have a ton of crazy injuries, but I took a lot of hits to the head. What impact am I going to have long term with that? I subjected myself to that. And so I think people need to understand that it's like, okay, yes, athletes are given more than your typical college student, but there's a give and take. And what are we sacrificing to that student's not? I would say this much. I think this is where people need to understand, and athletes need to understand this as well. Humble yourselves. We are not any better. And I've seen this where some guys in the past that I played on teams with felt that they were better human beings and better and above others because of their athletic ability. Now that's a terrible mindset to have because it's not true. It's like you're really good at a sport. That doesn't make you a better human being. Like we're all great at our own things. But are we given more than what some other college kid might be given? Yeah, but we were also bringing in millions of dollars to the university. So if we start getting free things in return, I mean, again, is it really free? I mean, we worked for it. And I think it's unfair to make that statement though and say like, oh, it's unfair because, well, we're putting in work. I mean, we worked nonstop. I was a job for 5 years of my life. I worked, at least sometimes 30, 40 hours a week in football and studying film. It was a full-time job. And then I also went to school on top of that. So I did what every other student did as well. So I can see where, yes, we do get special treatment, but I don't think it's unfair. I think it is fair. It's just kind of how it goes. And at the end of the day, if you're bringing in money to the university, then yeah, I mean, you're going to probably see a benefit on that on the receiving end of getting some free things in return. In sports, people care so much about physical health and making sure their favorite athlete isn't injured. But why don't we go out of our way to make sure our favorite players aren't depressed? Isn't that just as important? Yes, 1,000%. I don't think, and I think we're starting to see now a transition in today's culture, and where more people are speaking about mental health, more so than I think we've ever seen. So that's really encouraging. But a lot of times, I don't think athletes are really just asked, hey, how's your mental health? And there's so, like, at the end of the day, a lot of times, and I think I've seen this, and I've spoken to actually just recently, I was talking to a couple former athletes that were coming out with a mental health app designed for college athletes. And I think they found, the studies that they presented to me were that college athletes are sometimes more depressed, and they see higher rates of depression amongst athletes versus just regular college students. And the question is, why is that? And I have to think it's because of the high expectations, the amount of pressure that athletes are under to perform. And really, I mean, that comes with, at the end of the day, we want you to show up on game day. I don't care what your mindset is. We don't care what your mindset is. We want you to show up and play. So whatever it is you're dealing with off the field, you just better show up come game day and play. And that's really kind of it's not really said, but it's just subconsciously kind of known throughout that here's my role. I need to show up. I have 100,000 people in the stands that are expecting me to come out today and play, no matter what I'm facing. It doesn't matter if I just broke up with my girlfriend the night before. It doesn't matter if I lost a family member. A lot of times I think there are very high expectations placed on athletes that it's the number one team in the nation coming into town and we have to beat them, and you're our star running back and you better play. And it's these really just high expectations placed on these athletes that they feel that, okay, well, I have to play because my whole school, is expecting me to do this. Nationally, ESPN's coming in and they're filming this game. So millions of people are expecting me to show up to play. I am that star player.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a ton of pressure. And if someone injures their ankle, everyone understands and goes, okay, they give him a pass. Okay, he has a high ankle sprain from last week's game. He can't play this week. And nobody really, calls him out for that. But what happens when an athlete sits out because of a mental health issue that they're having? I think a perfect example of this was, I think Simone Biles did this in the Olympics. And I read online, she faced blowback. Everyone's like, you're one of the top, the best at your sport. How come you can't master this mental health aspect side of it? Like you're letting down your country. And it's like, can you imagine the amount of pressure is on her shoulders when someone's telling her she's letting down her country? She knows who she's representing. She knows she's representing the United States. And it's like, but that's where people place these expectations on individuals. And it's like, that is a world of pressure. Over the weekend, I was there. I was at the Michael Phelps charity event, and he was raising awareness for mental health. He's a big advocate in that. Talk about a guy, again, that everyone thinks had it all, won all these medals, but he went through a ton of, he suffered from a lot of, he had depression from what I've heard, and he's shared that story. And it's like, because he felt he had the world all watching him to perform. And if he did anything wrong, he was going to face a tremendous amount of blowback. So we need to be prioritizing mental health for everybody, but also have an understanding for athletes that, again, like those expectations can feel like a mountain. And we have to be able to address that and provide the resources for athletes
For sure.
so that they can get the help they need as well.
Absolutely. And I think what you said is so important, which is that in 2022, it seems like people are opening up about mental health more than ever. And that means we need to keep doing it.
Yeah.
We can't get complacent. And I think people like you, people like Michael Phelps, Simone Biles are setting such an awesome example of what it means to actually open up about what mental health looks like so people can understand and hopefully things can change. So thank you.
Absolutely. Clayton, drop a hot take.
Here we go. What do you got for us?
Well, okay, I have one that pops up in my head that I think I've lived personally and what I've found. The idea of structure, and how my hot take is that too much structure can be a bad thing.
Where does that come from?
From life experiences for me.
Okay.
It's interesting because this is my own personal take on it, but I look at it like all throughout our lives, we have a lot of structure. When we're born, we go to preschool, then we go to elementary, middle school, high school, college. And there was always kind of a roadmap for what we were supposed to do. But I feel like this happens to a lot of individuals towards the end of college, and then even after college. All of a sudden, they go, college ends, they get their diploma, and then they say, well, now what? And I think that thought comes in all of our heads, and I think that thought is stemming from, I had all this structure. I was told, I knew when I was young as a kid that I would go to college, I'd graduate, that happened in my family, or maybe I was just gonna go and get my high school degree if nothing else. But there was always just, this is what you do this, and then you become an adult. And then you have kids, or you meet somebody, you get married, you have kids. And there's just kind of this structure built in our society. But what happens when you don't follow that path? What happens when you veer off the path? I think that's where all of a sudden there's this discomfort. And people become uncomfortable because they say, well, I'm no longer in this land of stability. Now I'm in this unstable state of mind, and it scares individuals, and they start to kind of freeze up and go, okay, I need my structure back. I need my structure. How do I regain a sense of structure? But oftentimes I think when you lose structure, you are placed in an uncomfortable environment. But what that does is I think that challenges you to find a way out. And when you find a way out, I think that's how you become a better individual. I think you start actively seeking solutions to be able to recreate that structure. And I think as humans, we all need a sense of structure. I don't think we can all go through our lives completely unstable. If you can live in an unstable environment your entire life, you're an incredible human being. I think we all want to come back to a roof over our head and somebody that we can, whether it's a family member, whether it's a loved one, somebody that we can come back to that we know is going to be there. So when we start our days, we might go into this crazy, wild environment, but we're always going to want to come back to some sense of structure. I'd be interested in trying to talk to somebody that has no structure and see how their mental health is. I think it'd be really challenging, but that's where it's great to have some structure, but sometimes when you have too much structure, you become complacent and you start going through the motions and you're just kind of just content with life, but you don't challenge yourself. Because oftentimes I think when you're in uncomfortable environments, you start looking at that perspective from a different one, because you're like, it's not working the way that I'm used to. How do I find another solution to this problem? What you end up doing is you end up learning. Through being uncomfortable, you fail, but it's never a failure, it's a lesson learned. I think that's where perspective is so critical. And the more times you fail and the more lessons you learn, the more perspectives you start to accrue. And I don't think you can accrue all those different perspectives if you don't step out of that structure. If you only know one speed, then you only stay in that one speed your entire life. But the second you step out of that and go, okay, I'm gonna test the waters, I'm gonna see what's over here. You've now stepped out of what you know, but now you're starting to learn what else is out there that you don't know.
Wow.
And that is when I think you truly start to flourish as an individual, challenge yourself to be a better human being, and you will end up learning more than you ever could have learned if you'd have just stayed in that little bubble that all you knew. But in order to do that, you have to break through that structure.
Hot take.
Yeah.
It's going to make me rethink the structure in my life. I'm pretty unstructured, and I don't think my mental health is so great because of it. So
there's a balance.
But sometimes I don't even believe in balance, but hey.
It's different for everybody, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. You might be able to teeter over here, and your balance is, you can manage this, but all of a sudden I come over and I step in your shoes for a day, and I'm like, no, thank you.
For sure. It's all subjective,
yes.
But that hot take was great.
Okay.
Clayton, if you had one message for our entire generation to hear, what would it be?
I would tell the younger generation to open up. I think opening up does so many wonderful things, but if you don't open up about something, you'll never be able to address whatever it is that you're suppressing. Only through having conversations, only through talking to others, will you be able to potentially find a fix or something that will alleviate the pain that you're going through. We all go through pain. And it's different for everybody. We all have different forms of pain. We all handle environments differently. But that's where I think we owe it to ourselves to open up, because as we open up to the right people, again, we have to be cautious. Like, you can't just open up to everybody. Sometimes opening up can backfire. So we have to be able to do our due diligence, and figure out who those individuals are. But the more times we talk about things, the more times that we put it out there, how we're feeling, the more we'll run into others that feel the same way. And I think that'll bring a sense of unity to the community as a whole. And we often find that there's a lot of parallels between individuals that come from completely different backgrounds. You'd be surprised what you have in common with somebody that's from a completely different part of the country that grew up in a completely different environment. That's what I loved about football. It took a bunch of different individuals, some from really nice neighborhoods, some from really bad neighborhoods, dangerous areas, some where education was important, some where others where the importance of education wasn't stressed. It brought us all together to fight for a common goal to win a game, but it was beyond that. What it was it gave us time to sit down in those locker rooms and start having conversations and realize that we might have had completely different upbringings, but we all still want the same thing. We all still want to feel valued. We all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. But we would have never have had those conversations had we not been brought together. But that's where I would say for the younger generation, let's find that community, find that sense of community, but you can't find it if you don't speak up.
Clayton, thank you for opening up here today on the couch. I think your vulnerability really is a superpower and makes so many people feel less alone. I know it made that impact on me today, so thank you. I so appreciated hearing all of your POVs, and I can't wait for our next conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Okay. You're awesome.
Yeah.
You're so great.
Yeah,
how do you feel?
I feel good. Honestly, I think just being able to, I don't know, I keep always wanting to challenge myself to have, make sure my words resonate and they have impact. And I think one thing that Susie is a victim to this, but I just let my thoughts run wild. And so oftentimes it's just so much fluff. And so I think I felt pretty good today. I liked the conversation. I thought it was very thought-provoking.
Yeah, you're awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, you're such a natural conversationalist. This is great.
I talk a lot. Yeah, that's right.
This is good.
my thoughts are racing all the time.
Sweet.
Okay. Is this a good angle?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Love it.